Hey guys, Frosty Knives here, back with another video, and today I wanted to talk about the Gunslinger and some very specific things about the Gunslinger. This isn't going to be a review of the Gunslinger. I've already done that when I reviewed all of the Dark Tower series. But I will say off the top of the video that this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy video. We're going to be talking about the Gunslinger in depth. We're going to be talking about some of the characters, and we're going to be talking about the whole series, especially and specifically the ending of the Dark Tower series. So if you haven't read the series and you want to, and you don't want to be spoiled, I would highly recommend not watching this video until you've read this series. Once you've read the series, if you want to come back and watch the video, that would be wonderful. But we are going to talk about a lot of things that pertain to the ending and pertain to characters in the ending. And there's going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you're not familiar with the Tower, if you're new to the Tower, you haven't read the series yet, you don't want to spoil yourselves, this might not be the video for you to watch. So I'll give you a minute to ruminate on that whilst I come over here and get my books. Okay, so now we're going to start heading into the video and the meat of the video. And what I wanted to talk about was specifically the ending of the Dark Tower and how some of us who have lived with the Tower for a long time, who have read the Tower from the very beginning, and specifically me, how I thought the ending of the Dark Tower was going to be way different than the ending that we actually got, and how I thought that the novel It was going to be way more important to the Dark Tower series than it actually is. Not that it isn't important, but I used to think it was a lot more important than it actually turned out to be. And so we're going to be talking about the ending, and we're going to be talking specifically about the conversation that Roland has with the Man in Black at the end of the Gunslinger. Now, for those of you that may or may not know, because I don't know what everybody knows out there, the Gunslinger, the novel, is a lot like The Stand. If you remember, Stephen King put out The Stand in 1978, and it was a very truncated version of The Stand. He had to cut out about 500 pages from the manuscript to get it published, and he never liked that. And then around 1990, he decided to go back and revise and republish The Stand as a remastered, revised, expanded edition, adding back in not everything that he cut out, but what he felt was important of the stuff that he cut out. And he added it back in, and he tweaked The Stand a little bit, and he made it more modern to the 90s. Added some more modern references. And then he published that. Stephen King did the same thing with The Gunslinger. The Gunslinger was published, and I'm not going to start doing dates because sometimes dates are a little fuzzy. It was the early 80s. For some reason, 1982 sticks in my head. But The Gunslinger was published in the early 80s. And as we all know, The Gunslinger feels and reads extremely different than the rest of the Tower. And then he put out Drawing of the Three, and then he started writing the Tower, actively writing the Tower. And as he actively wrote the Tower, and he got book in and one more books and more books and more books, he noticed, as we all did, that the Gunslinger didn't quite feel like the rest of the Tower because it wasn't written like the rest of the Tower. So after he finished writing the whole Dark Tower series, he wrote and revised the Gunslinger. I believe it was in 2004. Might be 3. Let me check. I have it right here. So, 2003. In 2003, he went back and he rewrote the Gunslinger. and he modernized it, and he made it, and he edited it, and he made it flow to feel like the rest of the series. And when he did that, things changed significantly in the Gunslinger, and specifically around the Man in Black and the talk that he has with Roland at the end of the Dark Tower. So we're going to talk about that, because I want to let you know how I used to think the tower was going to end, and then we're going to talk about how the tower actually ends. So in researching sort of this video, I realized that I own 4 copies of the Gunslinger. We have the original Plume edition of the Dark Tower, the Gunslinger, with the illustrations, just like the Plume edition of the Drawing of the Three and the Wastelands and the Wizard and Glass. This is the Plume edition of the Tower, of the Gunslinger, with a pretty good cover. Roland and Court's Hawk, and David, Roland and David. So we have this one. Picked this up at a yard sale for $3. And then I have this version of the Gunslinger, which is still the original version of the Gunslinger. I think this was sometime in the 90s, back when he was putting out these really crappy covers, when they were putting out Stephen King books with these really like low key crappy covers. Never did like the covers, just a weird version of the tower. And then I have the revised and expanded version, 2003, with a new introduction by the author. 2003 remastered, revised version of the Gunslinger, with the picture of King on the back, him as a young adult and him as an older adult. So I have that, and then I picked up this from a yard sale, which is another version of the revised and remastered Gunslinger. Nothing new. The font, the book is bigger. It's the new mass market paperback version. But I really liked this cover. That's why I bought it, because I liked this cover. And I need a book. I need a version of the Dark Tower I can make notes in, because I don't make notes in books. I don't write in my books. I don't highlight my books. I needed something if I ever wanted to write in the books, notes. I figured this would be it. And I really do. I really love, that is a fantastic cover. And on the back, we've got an even better. I love these illustrations on these new ones. This is just a fantastic cover. So, you guys are lucky, because you get to read the Tower with no breaks. If you want to read the Tower right now, you can just pick it up from book 1 and just go. And back in the day, that wasn't the case. Back when I was reading the Tower, the books were coming out years apart. So we had years in between the books wondering, is he going to write another book? When is he going to write another book? And what does it all mean? And we had a lot of time, a lot of free time on our hands to think about what King meant when he was writing these books as they were coming out. And I had a lot of time to think about what King meant when he wrote The Gunslinger. So we're going to talk about not all of the changes. We're going to talk about the important changes. 2 important changes that King made in the Gunslinger. And the first important change that he made was, in the original, the Man in Black and Martin Broadcloak were different people, right? The Man in Black and Walter were always the same person. Walter was always another name for the Man in Black. But in the original, Martin Broadcloak was his own person. Was their own character. And then later on, in the Wastelands, they tie the Man in Black with Randall Flagg. So, in the original, a lot of these people were different. What he did was, in the revised version, they're all the same person. So, they're all different names for the same person. The Man in Black, Walter Paddock. has many names because he's quasi-immortal and he's lived for a very, 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 very long time. And he's gone by many, many names. So, the Man in Black, Randall Flagg, Walter O'Dim, Martin Broadcloak, Richard Fannin, those are all the same character. So he made all of those people that were referred to in the original Gunslinger, Walter and Martin, and Man in Black, Randall Flagg, that's the same character. So he sort of solidified that, making that as, okay, you never really talk about Martin anymore. And then later on in the books, in the later books, you find out that's when you start making the connection that Flagg and Martin. So anyway, he corrected that in the new version. It's all the same person. Randall Flagg, the walking dude, Man in Black goes by a billion monikers. But then we come to the conversation. And this is where it gets interesting. And this is where it differs. So, I'm going to read to you. We're going to read and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to read to you the conversation between Roland and the Man in Black. And I'm going to start with the revised version. This is the version that most people who pick up the Gunslinger are going to have. They're gonna find the revised version. So we're gonna start with this. And we're gonna start with him talking with Flagg. Where am I gonna start? So Roland asks him, Roland says, well, I wouldn't want to tire you out, so let us speak the truth. We'll start here. And he asks the Man in Black, start by telling me what exactly you mean by glamour. Why, enchantment, Gunslinger. My king's enchantment has prolonged this night and will prolong it until our palaver is done. So, glamour means magic. How long will that be? And Man in Black says, long. I can tell you no better. I do not know myself. And then he says, ask. I will tell you what I know. You have caught me. It is fair. I did not think you would, yet your quest has only begun. Ask, and it will lead us to business soon enough. So this is where Roland starts asking questions, and Man in Black starts answering it. So then he says, who is your king? I have never seen him, but you must. But before you meet him, you must first meet the Ageless Stranger. The Man in Black smiles spitelessly. You must slay him, Gunslinger. Yet I think it is not what you wish to ask. So King starts to tie in the Crimson King. Who is your king? And Flagg says, Man in Black says, I've never seen him. The Crimson King exists, and he's in the tower, but he's never seen him. But then he says, but before you get to the tower, before you get to the king, you gotta face and fight the Ageless Stranger, and you gotta get through them. We'll talk about that. Because Roland never meets anyone called the Ageless Stranger. So what the hell is the Man in Black talking about? But we'll get to that. Then Roland says, if you've never seen your king and master, how do you know him? He comes to me in dreams. As a stripling, he came to me when I lived, poor and unknown in a far land. Blah, blah, blah. So he tells him he comes to him in his dreams. That's how he knows him. And then Roland asks him about the Ageless Stranger. And he says, and this stranger, does he have a name? Oh, he is named. And Roland asks, and what is his name? And the Man in Black says, Legion. His name is Legion. The Man in Black said softly. And somewhere in the easterly darkness where the mountains lay, a rock slide punctuated his words, and a puma screamed like a woman. The Gunslinger shivered, and the Man in Black flinched. Yet I do not think that is what you wish to ask either. It is not your nature to think so far ahead. So, the Ageless Stranger that Roland has to defeat before he gets to the tower is also named Legion. He never meets anybody that fits that description. Again, we'll talk about that. So then the gunslinger asks, "This stranger is a minion of the tower, like yourself?" "Yes. He darkles, he tinks, he is in all times, yet there is one greater than he." And then Roland says, "Who?" And the man in black says, "Ask me no more," the man in black cries. I know not, I do not wish to know. To speak of the things in end world is to speak of the ruination of one's own soul." So he doesn't want to answer that. He's freaked out, right? He says, you got to get through the stranger, but there's one greater than the stranger. And who is that? And that's where where Man in Black says, "I don't want to talk about it. We don't talk about the things in the tower. We don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about the tower. We just don't do it because it ruins you." And then Roland says, "And beyond the Ageless Stranger is the tower and whatever the tower contains." "Yes," whispers the man in black. So as it stands, Roland has to get through the Ageless Stranger, named Legion, to get to the tower. And then once he's done that, there's someone greater than that creature, the Ageless Stranger. And then he gets to the tower. So that's how that stands. We'll just talk about this a little bit right now while we're talking about it. What does that mean? There is no one that Roland ever meets called the Ageless Stranger. There is no one named Legion. And fans have sort of wondered, what does that mean? Well, in the Wastelands, when the man in black meets Andrew Quick in Lud, I think it was in Lud, in the Wastelands, and Andrew asks him who he is, the man in black introduces himself as the Ageless Stranger. So it's very possible that in this conversation, the man in black is essentially telling Roland, before you get to the tower, you got to beat me. You got to go through me. And then if you defeat me, there's someone greater than me that you have to defeat. And then you get into the tower. Then you get to the tower. So it's very possible that the man in black is saying, you got to get through me. And then you got to get through the Crimson King. The Crimson King who is greater than me. And then you get into the tower. And that's why the man in black freaked out. Because he doesn't want to talk about the Crimson King. Crimson King freaks everybody out. So he doesn't want to talk about it. So that's the running thought, right? That the Ageless Stranger is a reference to Flag himself. Either that or Flag just flat out lied to him. Or the man in black just flat out lied and made up the Ageless Stranger to throw Roland off the quest. Those are the only two options. I like to believe that he's referring to himself. I like to believe that when the man in black says, you got to beat the Ageless Stranger, he's saying, you got to go through me. But he's not saying you got to go through me, right? He's telling him that. He says, in order to get there, you got to beat me first. Which, as we all know, never happens. Because at the end of the book, Mordred, the end of the series, Mordred kills Flag. And Roland never does. Roland never beats. That's why for years and for years and for years and for years, we were expecting a final showdown between Roland and Randall Flag, and we never got it. We got Mordred killing Randall Flag, and that was a letdown. That was a bit of a letdown, because we never got that final confrontation between those two powers. Roland having to get through Flag to get to the king, to get to the tower. We never got that confrontation. So that was always a bit of a letdown for me. But here is the interesting part. Let's see what King writes about originally. And this is where I think he was going. And this is why I used to think that it was so much more important. So let's go back to that same conversation. There's my bookmark. Let's go back to that same conversation. So he talks about glamour, and he tells him what glamour is. We're going to skip that part. And then he says, "Who is your master?" We're back there. "I have never seen him, but you must. In order to reach the tower, you must reach this one first. The Ageless Stranger." He talks about the Ageless Stranger again. And then he says, "If you've never seen him, how do you know? He came to me once in a dream when I lived in a faraway land." And then he says, we're still kind of following, and then he says, "The stranger has no name." And Man in Black says, "Oh, he is named." And Roland asked him, "What is his name?" And in the original, the Man in Black says his name is Merlin. Merlin. So in the original, the Ageless Stranger's name was Merlin, not Legion. He brought Merlin into it because he was really going, originally, I think he was really going for that whole Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur vibe, so he threw Merlin in. But he changed it because, as we know, reading about the Man in Black's history, as we know, the Man in Black is an offspring of Merlin. It's one of his kids. Man in Black, Merlin is the Man in Black's father or ancestor. It's his line. So we know that. So King had to change it to Legion, which again didn't make any more sense than calling him Merlin. But this is where it gets interesting. Roland says, "This stranger, this Merlin, is a minion of the tower like yourself," and he says he's much greater than I am. It has been given to him the power to live backward in time. Yet there is one greater than he. Now here's where it gets interesting. There is one greater than he. And this is the part that King cut out of the revised bit. Now in the revised bit, it says, "There is one greater than he," and then Roland asks, "Who?" And then Flag shuts him down and says, "Ask me no more, we don't talk about it." But in this book, in this version, he answers him. And he says, "Who?" And the Man in Black says, "The Beast. The Beast," the Man in Black whispered fearfully. "The keeper of the tower, the originator of all glamour." The Beast. So there's the Ageless Stranger, and then there's a beast, the one from whom all magic comes from. The Beast of the Tower. What is that? And Roland asks, "What is it? What does this beast?" And then, "Ask me no more," the Man in Black cried. His voice aspired to sternness and crumbled into beseechment. He says, "I know not, I do not wish to know." And then these next two sentences become very important. To speak of the beast is to speak of the ruination of one's own soul. And here's the important sentence. Before it, Merlin is as I am to him. Before, I don't think you can see it, but before it, capital I, before it, Merlin is as I am to him. The beast was named in this book as it. So when it came out, and we got to Pennywise, and we got to the were-spider, and we got to all of that, I thought, holy shit. In order to get to the tower, Roland has to go through the Ageless Stranger, and then he has to defeat it, who keeps the tower, who guards the tower, in order to get into it. I was convinced, holy shit, I was convinced that Roland had to fight it, had to fight Pennywise, had to fight the spider to get into the tower. Now, we know that didn't happen, and we know that King changed it. We know that King changed all of that and said, you know, you got to go through the Ageless Stranger and then you got to go through the Crimson King to get to the tower. Because there was no Crimson King when King originally wrote the Gunslinger. But how much different would that have been if King had stayed with that? Right? And I lived with that for years. I was expecting that for years, that we were going to get a confrontation between Roland and the Ageless Stranger, and then we were going to get a confrontation between Roland and it, and then he was going to get into the tower, and I was just expecting these big, epic battles that we never got. Now, King still maintained some of the connection with it, right? By making the Crimson King a were-spider, just like it is, by making Mordred a were-spider, just like it is. So he kept the same species, the same characteristics that the Crimson King and Mordred and it all shared. They were all were-spiders. But what a letdown that was, and how much more epic would it have been if Roland got to blow through, have this epic battle with the Ageless Stranger, and then he got to have this epic battle with it to get into the tower. And the battle that we actually got at the end of the Dark Tower series, where Mordred kills Flag and not Roland, and where Patrick Danville basically just erases the Crimson King out of existence. That's why it was a letdown. That's why we were expecting more. That's why I was expecting more, because of all of that. And we didn't get it. And that is why I feel the ending of the Dark Tower is not as strong as it could have been. Because King had set him up. He had set himself up for these epic encounters, and we just never got them. We got what we got, and while we got what we got may be good, it will never be epic. It will never be as epic as Roland gunning down the Ageless Stranger, and then Roland having a fight with Pennywise, with it. That would have just been epic. That would have been awesome to read. I wish I had gotten a chance to read that. And we just never got it. And it is what it is. And that's why those of us, like myself, who have lived with the tower for as long as we have lived, that's why we're a little disappointed. And for those of you who have read the tower brand new, like right now, and don't know that sort of backstory, you may have a different opinion and a different feeling on the ending of the tower than I do. And that's okay. I was just expecting something a little more epic, and then we just didn't get it. I remember reading the Tower, the last Tower book, and I remember putting it down and going, that's it? That's all we got. Where's the confrontation? Where's the Ageless Stranger? Where's any of that? And we didn't really get it. We didn't get it. I think we got a fight between Roland and Mordred. But that's not the fight that I wanted. I didn't want Mordred. I didn't want Mordred. I wanted it. Ancient it. That's what I wanted. That's what we didn't get. So guys, that is my video on the ending of the Dark Tower and the Gunslinger. And my thoughts on that. I didn't realize we would go this long, but here we are. So if you've made it to the end of the video, you're a trooper. And I thank you for watching, and I thank you for listening to me talk about one of my favorite topics, two of my favorite topics, King and the Dark Tower. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please share it around, like and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. I am out of breath right now, and I need something to drink because I'm parched. So until next time, I will see you in the next video.